I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. It was Lily's 10th birthday party, and the house was filled with her friends, their joyful squeals echoing through the rooms. But the smile plastered on my face felt like a thin veil, barely concealing the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. As I made my way through the crowd, I caught sight of Derek huddled in the corner, his phone pressed against his ear. His body language spoke volumes. The furtive glances, the hushed tones. I knew that look all too well. It was the look of a man with something to hide. Unable to resist the burning curiosity, I edged closer, my heart pounding in my chest. That's when I heard the words that would forever shatter the fragile illusion of our marriage. "I miss you, baby," Derek murmured, his voice dripping with affection. "I can't wait to see you again." My breath caught in my throat as the realization dawned on me. He was having an affair? Again. Memories of his past indiscretions flooded back, the pain and betrayal as fresh as the day I discovered them. In that moment, something snapped inside me. I couldn't contain the rage any longer. "Derek!" I hissed, my voice cutting through the din like a knife. "Who are you talking to?" He whirled around, his eyes wide with panic. "Jenna, it's not what you think. Don't give me that bullshit." I spat, my hands trembling with fury. "I heard everything. How could you do this to us, to Lily again?" Derek opened his mouth to respond, but the words died on his lips. There was no excuse, no justification that could undo the damage he had inflicted. I felt the eyes of our guests on us, their murmurs of concern rippling through the room. But in that moment, none of it mattered. All that mattered was the betrayal that had once again torn our family apart. As I looked into Derek's eyes, I saw a man consumed by his own selfishness, a man who had sacrificed everything for his own fleeting desires. And in that moment, I knew that this time, there would be no forgiveness, no second chances. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was prepared to fight for my daughter, for our future, no matter the cost. In the days following Lily's party, a cold silence descended upon our home. Derek and I barely spoke, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavy in the air. But I knew I couldn't let this stand. I had to uncover the full extent of his lies. That's when I decided to hire a private investigator, a no-nonsense woman named Riley. From the moment she stepped through the door, I could sense her determination. This was a woman who knew how to get answers. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, her voice firm and confident. "Tell me everything you know." I took a deep breath and launched into the sordid tale of Derek's infidelity, laying bare the painful details of his past affairs and the emotional turmoil they had caused. Riley listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I need to know the truth," I pleaded. "No matter how ugly it is, I can't live with the lies anymore." Riley nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. "Leave it to me, she said. "I'll find out everything." True to her word, Riley went to work, following every lead, leaving no stone unturned. And as the days turned into weeks, the shocking revelations began to pile up. It turned out Derek's affair was just the tip of the iceberg. Riley uncovered a web of deceit that stretched far beyond my worst fears. Hidden bank accounts, offshore investments, even evidence of fraudulent business dealings. It seemed my husband's double life knew no bounds. With each new discovery, my heart grew heavier, the weight of his betrayal crushing me from all sides. But through it all, I couldn't help but feel a perverse sense of relief. At least now I knew the truth, no matter how ugly it was. When Riley presented me with her final report, a thick dossier brimming with damning evidence, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. Derek had thought he could hide in the shadows, but now his misdeeds were laid bare, exposed to the harsh light of day. As I flipped through the pages, my mind raced with a million thoughts. How could I have been so blind? How could the man I loved, the father of my child, have been capable of such deception? But amidst the pain and confusion, a new emotion began to take root, a burning desire for justice, for revenge. Derek had made his choices, and now it was time for him to face the consequences. I looked up at Riley, my eyes steeled with determination. "What's our next move?" I asked, my voice unwavering. A hint of a smile played across her lips. "That's up to you, Mrs. Anderson, but if you want to bring him down, I know just the place to start." Riley's words echoed in my mind as I made the call that would set my plan in motion. "Hello, Cora? It's Jenna Anderson." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost sense the woman's surprise. After all, it had been years since Derek's first wife and I had spoken. "Jenna?" Cora's voice was guarded, but there was a hint of curiosity. "What's this about?" I took a deep breath, steeling my nerves. "It's about Derek," I said. "I know everything." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For a moment, there was silence, and then Cora let out a bitter laugh. "So he finally showed his true colors, did he?" she spat. "That lying, cheating bastard." Her anger was palpable, and I couldn't help but feel a kinship with this woman I barely knew. We had both been victims of Derek's deceit, our lives upended by his selfish actions. "I want to make him pay, Cora," I said, my voice trembling with determination. "For everything he's done to us, to our families." Cora was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Finally, she spoke, her words laced with a quiet fury. "What did you have in mind?" In the days that followed, Cora and I became unlikely allies, united in our quest for vengeance. We traded stories, piecing together the full extent of Derek's betrayal, each revelation more shocking than the last. He always had a way of making you feel special. Cora confided, her eyes distant. "Like you were the only one who mattered, but it was all a lie." I nodded, understanding all too well the manipulation tactics Derek had employed. He was a master of deception, expertly spinning his web of lies to ensnare us both. But as we continued to compare notes, a plan began to take shape. A plan to expose Derek's misdeeds to the world, to strip away the facade he had so carefully constructed. "There's a charity gala coming up," I said, rifling through the papers Riley had provided. "Derek's been named the guest of honor. It's the perfect opportunity." Cora's eyes lit up, a predatory gleam in her gaze. "We can hit him where it hurts the most, his reputation, his precious public image." The pieces were falling into place, and with each passing day, our determination grew stronger. We would gather every shred of evidence, every damning recording, and present it to the world in a way that Derek could never recover from. As the date of the gala drew closer, I could feel the anticipation building within me. This was our chance to finally make Derek pay for his sins, to expose him as the lying, cheating monster he truly was. And when the time came, Cora and I would be ready, armed with the truth and a burning desire for justice that not even Derek's web of lies could extinguish. The days leading up to the charity gala were a whirlwind of activity. Cora and I spent countless hours poring over the evidence Riley had gathered, meticulously planning our next move. "We need to hit him from all angles," Cora said, her voice steely with determination. "Leave no room for doubt or excuses." I nodded, my mind racing with possibilities. We had audio recordings of Derek's tawdry phone calls, bank statements detailing his hidden assets, even testimonies from some of his other mistresses, all damning evidence of his duplicity. "And we need to make sure it's public," I added. "No more hiding in the shadows for him." Cora's lips curved into a predatory smile. "Don't worry, Jenna. By the time we're done, the whole world will know exactly who Derek Anderson really is." As the gala drew closer, the anticipation was electric. We finalized our plans, coordinating every detail with military precision. Cora had arranged for a team of tech experts to hack into the event's audio and visual systems, ensuring our damning evidence would be broadcast for all to see. The night before the gala, I found myself unable to sleep, my thoughts consumed by the impending confrontation. I pictured Derek's smug face as he took the stage, basking in the adulation of his peers, blissfully unaware of the reckoning that awaited him. A part of me felt guilty for what we were about to do. After all, Derek was still Lily's father, and I knew the fallout would be devastating for her. But then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the years of living in the shadow of his deceit, and my resolve hardened. He had made his choices, and now it was time to face the consequences. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at a friend's house, unable to bear the thought of her witnessing the chaos that was sure to unfold. As I hugged her goodbye, a pang of sadness tugged at my heart, but I knew I was doing the right thing for both of us. When I arrived at the gala, the energy in the air was electric. The city's elite had turned out in force, mingling and schmoozing with their usual pomp and circumstance. Cora was already there, her eyes scanning the crowd with a predatory gleam. "It's time," she murmured as I approached. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. This was it, the moment we had been building towards, the moment when Derek's lies would finally be laid bare. As he took the stage, his smile broad and his hair perfectly coiffed, I felt a surge of disgust. How dare he stand there, so smug and self-assured, when his entire life was built on a foundation of lies? But then, just as he opened his mouth to speak, the first audio recording began to play, his voice echoing through the hushed ballroom. "I miss you, baby. I can't wait to see you again." Derek's smile faltered, his eyes widening in panic as the recording continued, laying bare the sordid details of his affair. And that was just the beginning. As the night wore on, more and more evidence was revealed. Bank statements, emails, even surveillance footage of Derek's clandestine meetings. The crowd's murmurs of shock and disgust grew louder with each damning revelation, until the entire room was a cacophony of outrage. Through it all, Derek stood frozen on the stage, his face ashen, his carefully constructed facade crumbling around him. And as I watched him squirm under the weight of his own lies, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. This was just the beginning of his downfall, and Cora and I would be there every step of the way, ensuring he paid the price for his betrayal. The fallout from the gala was swift and brutal. In the days that followed, Derek's life unraveled at a dizzying pace, each new revelation more damning than the last. I remember sitting across from him at the kitchen table, watching as the weight of his misdeeds crushed him beneath its immense weight. His eyes were hollow, his once confident demeanor replaced by a shell of a man. "How could you do this to us, Jenna?" he croaked, his voice a mere shadow of its former self. "To Lily?" I felt a flicker of pity for him, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of his betrayal, his utter disregard for our family. "Don't you dare try to play the victim here, Derek," I spat, my words laced with venom. "You brought this on yourself." He flinched as if struck, but I didn't care. The time for placating his fragile ego was long gone. As the days ticked by, the consequences of Derek's actions continued to mount. Business partners severed ties, friends turned their backs, and the once respected businessman found himself a pariah in the city he had once ruled. Cora and I watched it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction, reveling in the knowledge that justice had finally been served. "He's getting what he deserves," Cora murmured as we pored over the latest headlines detailing Derek's downfall. I nodded, my jaw set in determination. It's not enough. Because even as Derek's world crumbled around him, I knew there was one final step we had to take, one that would ensure he could never escape the consequences of his actions. It was then that I made the decision to transfer our joint assets into a separate account, effectively cutting him off from the vast fortune he had amassed over the years. "You're not going to get away with this," Derek snarled when he discovered what I had done. "That money is half mine." But I simply met his gaze with a steely resolve, unflinching in the face of his rage. "Not anymore," I said, my voice calm and measured. "You lost that right when you decided to throw our family away for a few cheap thrills." He lunged at me then, his hands outstretched. But I didn't flinch. This pathetic display of anger was nothing compared to the pain he had put me through. In the end, he stormed off, his threats and curses echoing in the empty halls of our once happy home. But even as he raged and ranted, I knew I had won. I had stripped him of his power, his wealth, his very identity, all the things he had valued more than his own family. And as I sat down to explain the situation to Lily, my heart heavy with the weight of what was to come, I knew that this was just the beginning. Derek's downfall was far from over, and I would be there every step of the way, ensuring he paid the ultimate price for his betrayal. Because in the end, karma has a way of evening the score, and Derek Anderson was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The night of the charity gala arrived with a sense of electric anticipation. Cora and I had spent weeks meticulously planning every detail, determined to make Derek's downfall as public and humiliating as possible. As we took our seats in the lavishly decorated ballroom, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was it. The moment we had been building towards, the moment when Derek would finally face the consequences of his actions. The air was thick with tension as the event's organizers took the stage, their faces beaming with pride and excitement. Little did they know that their much-anticipated gala was about to be hijacked by a far more dramatic turn of events. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC boomed, his voice echoing through the hushed ballroom. "It is my honor to introduce tonight's guest of honor, the man whose generous contributions have made this evening possible, Mr. Derek Anderson." A smattering of polite applause rippled through the crowd as Derek strode onto the stage, his practiced smile firmly in place. But as he approached the podium, a look of confusion flickered across his features. That's when the first audio recording began to play, the familiar sound of his voice filling the room. "I miss you, baby. I can't wait to see you again." Derek's smile faltered, his eyes darting around the room in panic as the recording continued, each sordid detail of his affair laid bare for all to hear. But we were just getting started. As the night wore on, more and more evidence was revealed. Bank statements, emails, even surveillance footage of Derek's clandestine meetings. The crowd's murmurs of shock and disgust grew louder with each damning revelation, until the entire room was a cacophony of outrage. Through it all, Derek stood frozen on the stage, his face ashen, his carefully constructed facade crumbling around him. And then, just when I thought the humiliation couldn't get any worse, Cora's tech team unleashed their final blow, a series of damning videos projected onto the massive screens flanking the stage. There he was, caught in the act, his indiscretions laid bare for the world to see. There was no denying it, no way to spin the narrative. Derek Anderson was a liar, a cheat, and a fraud of the highest order. As the final video faded to black, a deafening silence descended upon the room. All eyes were fixed on Derek, the once revered philanthropist, now reduced to a shell of a man, his reputation in tatters. It was Cora who finally broke the silence, rising from her seat and fixing Derek with a withering glare. "You thought you could hide from the truth, didn't you?" she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "Well, the truth has a way of catching up with you, Derek. And now, the whole world knows exactly who you really are." Her words hung in the air like a damning proclamation, a final nail in the coffin of Derek's once pristine public image. As the crowd erupted into a cacophony of jeers and condemnation, I sat back and watched the spectacle unfold, a sense of grim satisfaction washing over me. This was it. The moment we had been building towards, the moment when Derek's lies and betrayals were finally laid bare for all to see. And as he stood there, alone and exposed, I knew that this was just the beginning of his downfall. Because in the end, karma has a way of evening the score, and Derek Anderson was finally getting his just desserts. The fallout from the gala was swift and merciless. In the days that followed, Derek's life unraveled at a dizzying pace, each new revelation more damning than the last. Everywhere he went, he was met with scorn and contempt. Business partners severed ties, longtime friends turned their backs, and the once respected businessman found himself a pariah in the city he had once ruled. I remember sitting across from him at the kitchen table, watching as the weight of his misdeeds crushed him beneath its immense weight. His eyes were hollow, his once confident demeanor replaced by a shell of a man. "How could you do this to me, Jenna?" he croaked, his voice a mere shadow of its former self. I felt a flicker of pity for him, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of his betrayal, his utter disregard for our family. "Don't you dare try to play the victim here, Derek." I spat, my words laced with venom. "You brought this on yourself." He flinched as if struck, but I didn't care. The time for placating his fragile ego was long gone. As the weeks ticked by, the consequences of Derek's actions continued to mount. Legal troubles soon followed, with investigations launched into his fraudulent business dealings and financial improprieties. Cora and I watched it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction, reveling in the knowledge that justice had finally been served. "He's getting what he deserves," Cora murmured as we pored over the latest headlines detailing Derek's downfall. I nodded, my jaw set in determination. And it's only the beginning. Because even as Derek's world crumbled around him, we knew there was one final step we had to take, one that would ensure he could never escape the consequences of his actions. It was then that Cora and I decided to go public with our own stories, to share our experiences, and shed light on the systematic abuse and manipulation that Derek had inflicted upon us. We granted interviews, penned op-eds, and even took to social media, determined to shatter the facade of respectability that Derek had so carefully constructed. And as our voices gained traction, more and more women came forward, each with their own tale of betrayal and deceit at the hands of Derek Anderson. The outpouring of support was overwhelming, a testament to the power of collective action in the face of injustice. "We're not just doing this for ourselves," Cora said during one particularly poignant television appearance. "We're doing it for every woman who has ever been lied to, cheated on, or made to feel less than by the men in their lives." Her words struck a chord, resonating with countless viewers who had suffered their own betrayals at the hands of those they trusted most. And as the movement grew, Derek's world continued to crumble around him, his once formidable reputation reduced to rubble. In the end, he was left alone and disgraced, a cautionary tale of what happens when ego and selfishness are allowed to run unchecked. And through it all, Cora and I stood tall, united in our determination to ensure that Derek Anderson would never be able to inflict his brand of pain and deceit on another soul again. Because in the end, karma has a way of evening the score. And Derek Anderson had finally learned that lesson the hard way. The divorce proceedings were a mere formality at that point. Derek's transgressions had been laid bare for all to see, and there was no denying the irreparable damage he had inflicted upon our family. As we sat across from each other in the attorney's office, the tension was palpable. Derek's once imposing presence had been reduced to a shadow of its former self, his eyes downcast and his shoulders slumped in defeat. "You've won, Jenna," he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you're happy now." I regarded him coolly, unmoved by his attempts at self-pity. "This was never about happiness, Derek. It was about justice." The settlement terms were more than generous. A substantial portion of our joint assets, primary custody of Lily, and a litany of legal restrictions designed to prevent him from ever repeating his deceitful behavior. Derek signed the papers without a word of protest, his once towering ego reduced to rubble by the weight of his own misdeeds. As I watched him slink out of the office, a broken man, I felt a strange sense of closure wash over me. The long, painful chapter of my life with Derek was finally coming to an end, and I could begin to rebuild anew. In the months that followed, Cora and I remained steadfast allies, determined to turn our shared trauma into something positive. We founded a support network for women who had been betrayed by their spouses, offering a safe haven for those navigating the treacherous waters of divorce and infidelity. The response was overwhelming, with women from all walks of life flocking to share their stories and find solace in the company of others who had endured similar heartbreak. "We're not just here to commiserate," Cora would say during our meetings. "We're here to empower each other, to remind ourselves that we are strong, capable women who deserve better than the lies and manipulation we've endured." Her words struck a chord, resonating with the countless women who had spent far too long internalizing the shame and guilt heaped upon them by unfaithful partners. And as our movement grew, so too did the public's awareness of the insidious nature of spousal betrayal. What had once been a taboo topic shrouded in secrecy and shame was now being brought into the light, discussed openly and without fear of judgment. Meanwhile, Derek's life had become a cautionary tale, a lesson in the consequences of unchecked ego and selfishness. Legal troubles continued to mount, with investigations into his fraudulent business dealings dragging on for years. But through it all, Lily remained my steadfast beacon of hope. Her resilience and strength in the face of her father's betrayal were an inspiration, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the bonds of family could endure. As we built our new life together, free from the shadow of Derek's deceit, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this point. It hadn't been easy, and there had been moments when I had doubted my own strength, but in the end, the truth had prevailed, and justice had been served. And as I looked towards the future, I knew that our story was far from over. There were still countless women out there struggling with the pain of betrayal, and it was up to us to shine a light on their experiences, to give them the courage to speak their truth and demand better. Because in the end, karma has a way of evening the score, and Derek Anderson's downfall was a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and the indomitable human spirit.